Kevin Stefanski's arrival in Atlanta didn't spark celebration. It ignited backlash. Falcons fans, still waiting for a coach who can elevate young talent and restore energy to the franchise, met the news with disbelief. After all, Stefanski's run in Cleveland was marred by stagnant offenses and the stalled development of Deshaun Watson. But amid the uproar, one voice cut through without saying much at all: Deion Sanders. When asked about the hire, he didn't offer critique or support. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. Just a phrase loaded with history. That's my house. And in that moment, it wasn't just nostalgia. It was a challenge. Atlanta's coaching decision may ripple for years, but the shockwaves are already visible in Cleveland. Stefanski's departure leaves the Browns exposed. No clear direction, no offensive identity, and a desperate need for a quarterback who can lead and learn simultaneously. That's where Shedeur Sanders becomes more than a name. He's a uniquely prepared prospect, shaped by elite instruction and immersed in professional football from childhood. Still, none of that guarantees success in a broken environment. Deion's silence isn't approval or disapproval. It's signal checking. He's watching to see if any team, especially Cleveland, can build something worth joining. Deion Sanders doesn't need a press tour to shake the NFL. All it took was 5 words on a morning show. That's my house. No rant, no follow-up, just a perfectly timed, emotionally loaded callback to a time when he was Atlanta football, when the Falcons were fast, bold, magnetic, and Primetime wasn't just a player, he was the identity. So when Coach Prime used that phrase in response to the Falcons hiring Kevin Stefanski, it wasn't a nostalgic nod. It was a controlled detonation. And what followed was exactly what Deion expected: a wave of speculation, reflection, and in Atlanta's case, frustration. Because the message behind those 5 words wasn't subtle. He was reasserting ownership, cultural, emotional, historical, over a team that seemed determined to drift further from what once made it great. And then came the second half of the quote: I'm not going to get started with that situation. In any other context, it would sound like deflection, but coming from Deion, that's precision. It's restraint. That's Coach Prime telling the world, I see what's happening, I have thoughts, but I'm not giving you the soundbite you're dying for. It's the kind of silence that doesn't dodge responsibility. It asserts dominance. He didn't need to explain himself. He said enough. Meanwhile, the Falcons fan base wasn't quiet. The backlash to the Stefanski hiring hit instantly. People weren't just disappointed. They were insulted. This is a team stacked with raw, young talent. A team ready to make a leap. But instead of boldness, they got a coach who's known more for underwhelming quarterback play than offensive innovation. And as if that wasn't enough, Stefanski brought Tommy Rees along for the ride. Another name that hasn't exactly lit up coaching circles. The fan reaction wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Falcons fans know what's at stake. They've seen what happens when teams get conservative in moments that demand vision. And now they're left wondering, if this was the big plan, what exactly is a plan? Then there's Deion, standing off to the side, watching unfold like a chess player 2 moves ahead. The timing of it all is impossible to ignore. Stefanski leaves Cleveland, lands in Atlanta, and destabilizes 2 franchises with 1 move. Because now, not only are Falcons fans unsure about their future, but Cleveland, they're in free fall. The Browns didn't just lose a head coach. They lost what little structure they had. Stefanski's exit, paired with Rees' departure, has left a gaping hole. There's no head coach, no offensive identity, and no quarterback they trust. It's not a coaching change. It's a teardown, which would be manageable if they had a clear solution. But they don't. What they have is a vacuum. And into that vacuum steps one very familiar name, Shedeur Sanders. On paper, Shedeur is a dream for Cleveland. A clean slate quarterback for a clean slate rebuild. Elite arm talent, mental speed, leadership, and a developmental trajectory that puts him years ahead of most rookie QBs. But here's the issue. Cleveland isn't ready for Shedeur. Because Shedeur's success doesn't just hinge on his skill. It hinges on structure, coaching, culture, And those are the exact things Cleveland has historically failed to provide. They've had quarterbacks. They've had picks. But what they haven't had is consistency. The kind of organizational backbone it takes to actually develop a star rather than waste him. Deion knows that. He's seen it too many times. Talented players dropped into dysfunctional systems, expected to save a franchise from the top down. It doesn't work. Not without support. Not without vision. And that's why Deion's silence on Cleveland has been so loud. He's not just being cautious. He's sending a message. That message is this. Shedeur isn't here to fix your mess. He's not a Band-Aid for broken culture. If you want him, prove you can support him. Show that you have the infrastructure, the continuity, and the patience to build around him. Because the Sanders camp isn't interested in headlines. They're interested in fit. And while these NFL teams are scrambling, guessing, and hiring out of desperation, what are Shedeur and Shiloh doing? Sitting front row at a fashion show in Paris. Not to show off, not to distract, but to recharge, to build brand equity, to show the world that elite athletes in 2024 don't just train, they prepare. Mentally, emotionally, professionally. This is modern professionalism. This is what maturity looks like in a generation of athletes who've grown up watching what happens to players who get fed into machine without a say. Shedeur and Shiloh are showing that public image, mental recovery, and intentional living aren't luxuries. They're requirements. This isn't about Paris. It's about poise. And Deion, he's orchestrating it all with minimal effort. He knows his words carry weight. That's why he uses them carefully. "That's my house" wasn't an offhand remark. It was a declaration, not of intent, but of perspective. It was him planting a flag without having to take a step. And it worked, because now every conversation about Stefanski's hiring includes Deion's reaction. Every speculation about Shedeur's landing spot includes Deion's silence. He's framed the discussion without ever needing to dominate it. And here's where it gets even more complicated for NFL franchises. This isn't a one-time thing. This is the future. Athletes like Shedeur aren't waiting to be chosen. They're vetting you. This isn't about entitlement. It's about evolution. When players are raised inside systems designed by Hall of Famers, when they study game tape since childhood, when they understand not just how to play, but how to lead, of course they're going to want control. Of course they're going to prioritize culture over clout. Deion's guiding this process like a veteran GM. He's not just influencing the narrative. He's reshaping how prospects are introduced to the league. And he's doing it with quiet confidence, because he's earned it. That's what makes his silence so intimidating to front offices. If Deion Sanders doesn't speak on your franchise, that's not neutrality, it's judgment. If he doesn't endorse your system, your leadership, your ability to nurture elite talent, it means you're not in the conversation. He doesn't waste words. And that silence, it forces teams to reflect, not react. So where does that leave Atlanta and Cleveland? Atlanta has to answer for hiring a coach that feels more like a placeholder than a leader. They have to decide whether they're chasing legacy or escaping it. Because if you bring in a coach with a track record of stagnation and ignore the voices that built your culture in the first place, don't be surprised when fans call it regression. And Cleveland? They're on the edge of opportunity and disaster. They could reset, rebuild, and become the system Shedeur deserves. Or they could repeat history. That decision starts now, not on draft night, but in how they rebuild leadership philosophy and structure. Deion's watching, not with anger, not with urgency, but with clarity, because this isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about placing Shedeur in a position to succeed. And if that means saying no to half the league, so be it. Drop a comment. Should Atlanta have gone in a more innovative direction? Can Cleveland finally get out of its own way? And is Deion doing the right thing by staying silent while the NFL tries to guess his next move? Like the video, share it with your crew, and subscribe if you want more stories that go way deeper than the headlines. Because this saga is far from over, and the Sanders family is just getting started. Right now, the NFL isn't just in the middle of a coaching shakeup. It's in the middle of a generational reset. And at the center of it all, without saying more than a sentence, is Deion Sanders. That's my house. That phrase didn't just stir up emotions in Atlanta. It reframed the narrative. Because when Hall of Famer, a two-time Super Bowl champion, and the face of your franchise's golden era speaks, everyone listens, especially when the silence after those words says just as much as the words themselves. Deion wasn't reminiscing. He wasn't trying to make it about himself. That line wasn't about ego. It was about standards. Atlanta was once a city where the football field was an extension of prime time. Energy, culture, showmanship, and execution. It all bled from Deion's presence. So when the Falcons, a team trying to climb out of years of underachievement, turned around and hired Kevin Stefanski, a coach just let go from Cleveland after an inconsistent, uninspired run, that wasn't a fresh start. It felt like a retreat, and you could see it in the reaction. Falcons fans wanted vision, innovation, a leader who could unleash their young talent, finally develop a quarterback, and bring an edge back to a team that spent far too long fading into the middle of the pack. But instead, they got Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees. Stefanski's name might sound respectable on paper. Coach of the year, a couple playoff runs, but context matters. In Cleveland, he oversaw a mess. Deshaun Watson, brought in on one of the most controversial and expensive contracts in league history, regressed. The offense, hyped to be a threat, became stale. Quarterbacks rotated, systems stalled, and fans grew restless. He didn't adapt. He didn't evolve. And eventually, the Browns hit eject. Then he lands in Atlanta. And the reaction was instant. This is the plan? That's why Deion's statement had weight. It wasn't just a quote. It was a challenge. A reminder to Atlanta's front office that there's a legacy here. And right now, they're not living up to it. But that quote didn't just reverberate through Georgia. It sent a shockwave straight to Cleveland. Because Stefanski's departure didn't just leave a hole. It left a crater. And now the Browns are facing a full rebuild with no clear direction. They need a new head coach, a new offensive system, and, most critically, a new quarterback. And right now, that's where Shedeur Sanders enters the picture. Let's be honest. Shedeur isn't just next up. He's already above the curve. His command of the game, his ability to process defenses, call protections, read coverages, and lead, all of that isn't projection. It's already happening. He's been prepped for the league since day one. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and professionally. Being coached by a Hall of Famer since childhood doesn't just give you mechanics. It gives you vision. So when the quarterback conversation shifts toward Shedeur as Cleveland stares down another reset, the fit on paper makes sense. Young talent, new system, clean slate. But this is where the facts start to bite. Because while Cleveland needs a quarterback, it's shown little proof it knows how to keep one. Look at the track record. Endless coaching changes, offensive line instability, disjointed front office decisions, and a history of forcing players into systems instead of building systems around players. It's not just bad luck, it's dysfunction. And Deion Sanders has been around the league long enough to spot dysfunction from across the country. He's not being quiet because he doesn't care. He's being quiet because he's studying, assessing, calculating, watching which teams are building the kind of environment Shedeur can thrive in, and which ones are still stuck in the cycle of patchwork solutions and PR-friendly hires. Because here's the truth that NFL front offices are starting to realize. Shedeur Sanders is not going to be drafted into just any situation. He's not a lottery ticket. He's a franchise investment. And the Sanders family has the leverage, the visibility, and the experience to make sure he lands somewhere that isn't just willing to take him, but prepared to elevate him. That's what makes this moment so defining. Because for years, NFL rookies have been treated as plug-and-play assets. Draft, develop, hope for the best. But Deion's silence is part of a larger shift, a shift in power. One where elite prospects, armed with knowledge, family mentorship, and brand equity, are no longer passively entering the league. They're evaluating it. And when Deion says nothing about Cleveland, it forces a pause. Not for drama, but for accountability. If a Hall of Famer who knows your team's history, who understands quarterback development better than most NFL GMs, won't even entertain the conversation, that's not shade. It's a reality check. So where does that leave Cleveland? Scrambling. Because now, with Stefanski gone and Rees out the door, the Browns aren't just trying to rebuild. They're trying to rebrand. And they don't have time to get it wrong. Again, if they want a shot at Shadur, they'll have to prove they've changed. That means smart hires, functional infrastructure, a quarterback-friendly system, and a commitment to long-term success, not short-term image control. Because right now, the Sanders camp has the luxury of being selective. Shadur isn't sitting around hoping to be drafted. He's working, training, traveling, appearing at high-profile events overseas with Shiloh, not to chase clout, but to demonstrate intentionality. Their presence at a Paris fashion event was no accident. It was strategic. It signaled balance, mental clarity, and understanding of brand is part of athletic success. Because it's not just about what happens on Sundays. It's about what happens in the 6 days before. That's what makes Shadur different. That's why his maturity is so valuable. And that's why Deion isn't rushing any part of this process. He's playing the long game, watching every coaching hire, every front office shift, and taking notes. So when the time comes, when teams start lining up for Shadur, it won't be about draft slots or salary offers. It'll be about alignment, fit, readiness. Because Shadur isn't going somewhere to develop. He's going somewhere to win. And that's why Deion's voice, even when it's limited to 5 words, matters more than ever. He's not just a proud dad. He's a strategist, a gatekeeper, a living reminder that success in the NFL isn't just about talent. It's about environment, support, culture. So if you're a team like Atlanta or Cleveland, ask yourself this. Do you have the foundation, the leadership, the long-term vision? Because if you don't, you're not just missing out on Shadur. You're missing the future. And here's what's really unsettling for NFL front offices. Deion Sanders is doing all of this without even trying. He's not launching a media campaign. He's not begging for interviews. He's not flooding social platforms with cryptic tweets. He made a single comment, "That's my house," and left the rest of the league scrambling to read between the lines. That's not noise. That's control. Because while everyone's dissecting his tone, his phrasing, and his refusal to elaborate, Deion is doing exactly what smart people do when chaos hits. He's letting everyone else overplay their hand. He's sitting back and watching which organizations panic, which ones fake stability, which ones make predictable hires because they're out of ideas and running low on time. And again, he's not saying a word. That's what's driving the speculation. That's why the tension around Shadur's NFL future keeps building. Because people aren't used to this level of silence from someone like Deion. They're used to sound bites. But now, he's making the room talk around him. And that's way more powerful. Let's not forget what Stefanski's exit from Cleveland actually triggered. This wasn't just a typical coach leaving after a lackluster season. This was the end of whatever philosophical identity the Browns thought they had. He didn't just walk away. He left with Rees, his new OC, and essentially gutted the offensive brain trust. Cleveland is now quarterbackless, directionless, and on the clock. That might sound like an opportunity. A clean slate. But in the NFL, a clean slate is only as good as what you build next. And Cleveland has a history of rebuilding without ever building right. And Deion knows that. He's not going to let Shadur become the next name in a long list of maybe he could have been the guy if they hadn't stories. Because this isn't just about talent. It's about infrastructure, about whether a team is capable of protecting a quarterback, not just physically, but strategically. You think Deion hasn't done the homework on every franchise in play? You think he doesn't know who's bluffing competence and who's actually built to last? He's watching what owners are doing, what GMs are prioritizing, how coaches talk about their vision, what support systems are being put in place around young quarterbacks. Because Deion has seen every side of the business, the glamour, the neglect, the way a bad fit can erase years of preparation. That's why he's quiet, because he knows that the NFL still hasn't adjusted to this new reality. The best players are watching you, too. They're not walking into this blind. Not anymore. Especially not when you've been coached since high school, really coached, with NFL-level detail and expectations. Especially not when your dad is one of the most famous athletes in football history and a walking case study in media literacy. And while the Falcons and Browns scramble for direction, Shadur and Shiloh are moving with complete calm. Their Paris appearance didn't just go viral. It sent a message. The NFL world may be spinning, but they're not. They're in control, not distracted, not withdrawn, just operating on a different wavelength. You don't show up at a global fashion event looking completely unbothered unless you know you've got leverage. And they do, because right now, Shedeur isn't just a future franchise quarterback. He's a brand. A fully developed, media-trained, mentally prepared brand that knows how to carry pressure without crumbling under it. That's not a bonus. That's a requirement in today's NFL. Let's call it what it is. The NFL has changed. This isn't just about throwing a perfect spiral. It's about handling the noise, the spotlight, the expectations, the scrutiny. And if you don't think Shedeur's already proving he can do all of that before draft day, you're not paying attention. Meanwhile, the Browns are stuck in this purgatory where nothing ever seems to stick. Quarterbacks come and go. Coaching philosophies get pitched and abandoned. Promises are made and quietly retracted. And now, they want to pitch themselves as a perfect landing spot for a quarterback who doesn't need them, but could choose them if they earn it. That's a long shot. Not impossible, but unlikely, because Deion is doing what most teams haven't learned to do: value long-term development over short-term headlines. He's not concerned with who has the first pick, or who has cap space, or who's due for a comeback season. He's concerned with who's actually ready as an organization, top to bottom, to support someone like Shedeur. And that's not going to be determined by who makes the flashiest hire. It's going to be determined by who builds the right foundation. And let's not pretend Atlanta is off the hook either. Sure, they landed their guy. Stefanski is the head coach. But what does that actually mean? Because when you look at the reaction from Falcons fans, one thing is clear. There's no excitement, no energy, no belief that this is a move that finally shifts the franchise into contention. The problem isn't just Stefanski's resume. It's what his hire represents. A safe, conservative move during a moment that demanded creativity and boldness. And when you couple that with Deion's comment, delivered with just the right amount of bite, it becomes impossible to ignore the contrast. The Falcons had a chance to reestablish identity, to reconnect with the swagger and pride that defined them during the primetime era. And instead, they made a move that felt corporate, detached, forgettable. So when Deion said, "That's my house," it wasn't just about ownership. It was about disappointment. It was his way of saying, you could have done more. You should have done more. And now, both Atlanta and Cleveland are staring down different versions of the same challenge, proving they deserve to be part of the future. Because Deion isn't fighting for attention. He is the attention. He doesn't have to campaign for respect. He commands it. And unless your organization is ready to back that up with substance, not spin, then you're just another team with a headset and a hope. Drop a comment below. Has Atlanta already fumbled the Stefanski era before it begins? Can Cleveland pull it together in time to make a serious pitch for Shedeur? And what do you think Deion's silence is saying about the state of the league? Hit that like button. Share this with someone who's watching the saga unfold, and subscribe for more breakdowns. Because as long as Coach Prime keeps moving like this, the league isn't just reacting to the Sanders family. It's being redefined by them.